Welcome to Cryptic Curiosity. We are your hosts,
Amber
and JoJo. In this episode, we will be discussing Ouija boards and our feelings and experiences with them.
Jolene, do you remember when we played with Ouija boards? Well, with a...
Yeah. I remember very well.
That's the kind of funny thing is we have experience with this, but we really didn't know like a whole lot about them at all. And doing a little research for our podcast here, that found out a lot about them that I didn't know, like how intertwined the Ouija board is with human culture. They have found them as early as 540 BC in Greece, at least the reference to the same divination that's used, that's used for Ouija boards. And China, similar types were used to communicate with the dead. And even Native American cultures used a similar tool, and they would use it to find missing people and objects and obtain spiritual information. So it's crazy that there's been some form of taking a planchette-like device and making symbols and looking for guidance that way. That's that far back.
They found missing people. Okay.
That's what they said, missing people.
Well, I guess you could ask it anything.
Right. And I think I've heard stories like where some mediums have tried to use them and stuff like that. I've never heard that they've worked, but later on they even found that the English version of it in like the 1800s was like a big table type device that it was a 3-legged table and it looked like a planchette, and it had one leg was a pencil, and they would draw on paper and they would spell out messages or draw pictures or answer their questions that way, which that I think would freak me out.
That's what I was just gonna say. That's a little bit scarier if it's like drawing the word out.
And a piece of furniture. I mean, like a small table, like an end table moving by itself is going to make me notice it. I don't think I'm going to be encouraging that type of behavior. And it wouldn't be like anything you could hide either. People would know you'd use it because you have it, and like,
right.
Where are you going to hide that at? But owning and using Ouija boards have always been controversial. It's always been kind of like Ouija boards. Everybody does it, but nobody talks about it. But there are some people that believe it's just a tool, that just one other way that you can obtain information, and they're not harmful, if used properly. The thing that I found interesting was that the people that believe that it's just a tool and there's nothing harmful that can come of it will also tell you that it can't be destroyed and never to burn it. And then we have the religious side of it, which would be the Bible telling us in Acts that you're supposed to burn or destroy all occult material. I kind of thought that would be backwards. Like, the Bible would tell you don't destroy it because, you may be leaving a door open. And proponents of it being like, or proponents of it being like, oh, it's not a big deal. Go ahead and get rid of it if you want to. Burn it. It's just a piece of cardboard.
I heard burning it can make things worse. But I guess it depends on where you hear it. Everybody says something different. I guess when it comes to that, but
I don't know. The one that we had, we moved from the house that we had all the activity in, and we put it in. It was a closet in the basement of that house, and one day, just out of curiosity, went to go find it, and it was gone. And nobody else knew it was there. So, who knows? Maybe it went and found somebody else to help or however we want to do it.
Open the door and there's a Ouija board just sitting down there. Hello!
Well, it was just, I mean, I'm pretty sure that probably somebody like threw it away or stole it or something like that. But it was just strange that just one day it was gone.
Right. I
But,
never had one myself.
well, you know, I do have one.
Yeah, I like them. I think that they're cool. Looks like it's the aesthetic part of them I like.
And that's exactly what mine's used for. It's supposed to be like a drink tray, and the bottom of it is a Ouija board, and it has a planchette tied around a handle. Well, I just hung it from the handle on the wall, so it just looks like an older Ouija board. You
See,
can
that's
see the plate.
cute. I would do that, but I my husband's one of those people that thinks that it's pure evil, so I can't bring one into the house. But I want one. I want one for that reason, just for the looks.
I would think that probably the most fun part about having a Ouija board in your house as decoration is you find out as soon as people walk in your house and sit down, you know, just as they start to get comfortable, you know how everybody like looks around, you know, like pictures on the wall, things like that. And you can tell as soon as they catch that there's a Ouija board hanging from my wall, because they're either get up and run out the door, or they're like, "Hey, cool, can we play with it?" No, that's not for play. That's for looks. Don't touch it.
They're like, oh shit, is that a Ouija board on your wall?
But spiritual interest was always a big part of American history. But it really got in popularity with the Fox sisters. The Fox sisters were two sisters that started in their home with supposedly a ghost that they would interact with by asking it, like knock twice for yes, once for no, and ask it questions, and the spirit would interact that way. And they actually traveled around the state. There was holding um, at least 100 people at a time in some occasions. And, you know, thinking that period of time in like the early or late 1800s, there was probably a whole town coming to see him. But with that, all that interest in spirituality and these ladies, you know, going around saying that they were communing with the dead, people are starting to do it in their home. They were using like homemade talking boards, is what they were calling them, and you know, like inviting their friends over on Saturday night, having drinks, playing with a Ouija board, just for fun, or you know, let's see if I can contact my husband that just died in the Civil War or something like that, because that at that time is what we're talking about, like Civil War time.
I could see
Every
how that would really, um, why they would be drawn to that at that time.
the movie Cold Mountain came to mind,
My
and
God, I
they,
love that movie.
you know how in despair they got that you would want to reach out to something to tell me this is gonna end, you know, or tell me anything. So
Right.
I, but there was some guys. There was four of them. I could only find the names of three of them. It was Charles Kennard, and then Elijah Bond, who was an attorney. He actually was a patent attorney. That'll be important in a minute. And Colonel Washington Bowie, a surveyor, and they started the Kennard Novelty Company. That's who created the Ouija board as we know it now. That looks like what you can go to Walmart and buy out of the kids aisle for a toy. Now, as far as the name, there's a couple different versions of how they came up with the name. The first one is that they took the French word for yes and the German word for no, which is we and ja, and stuck it together, which would also mean that everybody pronounces it wrong. Another one was that was actually gathered from letters that were found from one of the investors, that it came from a sister-in-law of one of the founders, and he claimed her to be a strong medium. So they were playing with a Ouija board, and supposedly the Ouija board told them that to name the board Ouija, and they asked the board what it meant, and the board replied, "Good luck." Now that could be taken one of two ways. That could be
Yeah.
good luck.
Exactly.
I guess that would depend on what your experience with it was. But she did say that she was wearing a locket with a picture of a woman in it with Ouija above her head. And that's the story that pretty much came from it, that it came from that locket, which was actually an author, and she was pronouncing her name. So I guess the real version is that it was that sister-in-law mispronouncing an author of the time's name. But I personally like the combining yes and no because that's on the board.
Right. That one makes more sense. I always wondered
It,
what it meant.
yeah, where it came from because it's not a everyday word.
No, and I have problems spelling it. The spelling of it gets me every time. I'm like, how do you spell this word? I have to look it up usually. Well, I don't
Uh,
spell it that often, so that's why I don't know.
yeah, how often do you write Ouija?
I always put a Q instead of the O.
Maybe because you think it looks better.
I don't know, maybe. See, I'm looking at it right now and it doesn't. I don't know. Never mind. That's not important.
No, you notice you don't see a lot of advertising even now for Ouija boards, and you really didn't back then either. There's like just a couple of flyers that could be found that advertised it as the wonderful talking board, and it testified that it was proven by the patent office. And now that I thought was a little funny, but apparently the chief patent officer demanded that a demonstration be made that it actually worked and could spell out his name. And supposedly the two that went in there to demonstrate it didn't know his name. However, one of them was a patent attorney, so he probably did know his name and just pushed it around to freak the guy out. And anyway, the guy bought it. He walked out of the room. It was noted he was white-faced and visibly shaken and awarded the patent for the new toy or game. So here you go, kids. Go summon an evil.
Right. Here's a birthday present, kids.
Now, it was a moneymaker, and it still is. Go to Walmart and go try to find. You might find one or two, but you're probably going to have to ask for it or have it shipped to the store because
Yeah,
they
I
sell.
haven't seen it actually. No, I remember like the times I've went like Christmas shopping, just looking, up and down the board game aisles. I've never actually seen it. At least as over the past few years or so.
I bought mine at Big Lots during a Halloween sale. It was Halloween decor.
The tray one?
Yep.
That's cool.
I think it was like $8.99. So for $8.99, I can summon a demon.
Let the party begin.
Oh, which that's pretty much the way it was marketed. It was marketed as both mystical and as family entertainment. So it sold.
I could picture a commercial for that. It just popped in my head, like a
This one
family
in
sitting
the
around
70s.
together.
In the 70s, I remember there was a commercial. There's a little girl with blonde hair and pigtails holding it up. It remained in popularity, but it got really popular again to where it was almost mainstream in like the 1910s and 20s, which would have been World War II era. And you think about off to war, prohibitions going on. You got gangsters running the show, not the cops. So shit probably sucked a little bit. And yeah, they went back to their living rooms with their friends and tried to spirits to entertain themselves because the main form of entertainment was taken away. It was so normal that in 1920, Norman Rockwell, now most people know who Norman Rockwell is by his paintings of, like idyllic families and, Thanksgiving dinner and all around the Christmas tree and, those type of paintings. And he painted one that appeared on the Saturday Morning Post that featured a woman holding a Ouija board in her lap. Uh, that I thought was pretty crazy because if you seen that on the cover of Life now, people would lose their mind.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Especially with cancel culture now.
Oh, it would be not good. It
No,
would
not
not
at
go
all.
over well.
But that's how normal it was. It wasn't like it is now, where if you even talk about it, then you must worship the devil or
Yeah,
whatever. But
that's
back,
exactly it. They think you're a Satan worshiper.
but for it to be literally a everyday thing that it could be on a national magazine like that and not be a big deal, it's not anything that could happen today. And that was a much more conservative time, at least compared to now.
Right.
Kind of a funny little part was there was a court case involving the Ouija board in 1958. A Connecticut court decided not to honor the Ouija board will of Mrs. Helen Dow Peck. She left $1,000 to two former slaves and a insane 152,000 to Mr. John Gale Forbes, a very, very lucky spirit. I just got one question there. How is he going to spend that money?
That's what
He's
I was
dead.
just gonna say. What's he gonna do with it? Like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe go shopping. I don't know.
I don't know. Pay some bills, do something. There are other things that I found just wild. There has been books and poems written claiming that they were written through the Ouija board. There was a woman in 1916, a Mrs. Pearl Curran, as she made national headlines when she started writing poems and stories that she claimed was dictated through the Ouija board from Mark Twain. But she actually sold books claiming that, so people evidently accepted that that was a legitimate medium, that you could obtain information like that, or why would they buy your book? Can you imagine if that's like where a lot of like horror movie stuff comes from? Somebody sitting there with a Ouija board, like, okay, tell me. Whatever you can use as your muse, I guess go for it. And that's pretty much what another guy named James Merrill did. He claimed that he used it as more like just a tool, a way to open himself up for ideas, that nothing came through and dictated the book, just allowed him to be more accepted. But I guess I could see that because my experience with a Ouija board, my mind got opened up pretty fast.
Yes.
Now, the uh, main thing I found extremely strange is that up to this point, the way people felt about it was kind of like no big deal. It was kind of like having Monopoly on your shelf or Scrabble. It wasn't a big deal. But that all changed in 1973 when The Exorcist came out. And ever since that day, it's been demonic and just a tool of the devil. Uh, and you don't hear anything else but that from then on. You never hear now about, oh, I used a Ouija board to write a song or to write a book.
Right. Even all these ghost hunting channels and shows and all that, even those people won't touch the Ouija boards. They're like, no, 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 no. And
Have
you would
you
think that
seen
they would want to.
Have you seen the video where it's a ghost hunting group and they are using a Ouija board or some type of divination tool like a Ouija board? And the camera, they're looking at their friends, they're all touching it, and the girl looks at the
A
camera and
woman,
you see her face change and they
yes,
pull her out of here real
that
quick.
video creeps me out so bad.
Yeah, I really wish that there was the technology there is now back when we had our experiences, because those are probably a lot of things going on that we didn't notice.
I know. We could have like gotten some, maybe some proof or something.
Now, there's probably a whole lot of evidence that we missed,
Probably,
and we
because I was always so scared.
and we never thought to take pictures while we were doing it either.
Oh, excuse me.
Well, there was no cell phones then. I mean,
Yeah, it was harder. Like you actually had to have a camera.
it was it was a few years later before everybody was carrying a cell phone. So some interesting things I found was there's a lot of people that have opinions about the Ouija board and people's experiences with them. In 1944, an occultist and a ranking Freemason of Manly P. Hall, he was also the founder of the Philosophical Research Society and an early author on the occult. He stated that, or in Horizon magazine, that during the last 20 to 25 years, I have had considerable personal experience with persons who have complicated their lives through dabbling with the Ouija board. Out of every 100 such cases, at least 95 are worse off for their experience. He went on to say, I know of broken homes, estranged families, and suicides that can be traced directly to this source. 95 out of 100. Where were all the, what happened to all the possessed people in the 20s? Because it was happening in the 40s.
Right.
Why wasn't it? You don't really see a lot of, I don't know, maybe that's why everybody had to go into mental hospitals and that.
Maybe that's what it was from. Or maybe they were more hush hush about it.
Maybe. Yeah, people went off to visit aunts during
Right.
that back then. And decades later, in 1965, a parapsychologist, Martin Ebon, said it all may start harmless enough, perhaps with a Ouija board, which will bring startling information at first and then establish credibility and or identifying itself as someone who is dead. It is common that people as have been chosen for this special task. He continues, quite often the Ouija turns vulgar and abusive or threatening. It grows demanding and hostile. Visitors may find themselves using the board compulsively as if possessed by a spirit, or hearing voices that control or command them. That's a little scary. But that's, I mean, every time you see like YouTube videos where people are documenting that stuff's getting weird and they played with a Ouija board, that's pretty much what they describe it as. Like, it wasn't my experience with it, but
Yeah. Other people make some. I can't think of the word. Extreme claims, I guess, with the Ouija board.
yeah. Um, there was also a Roman priest, Malachi Martin, that believed that talking boards are dangerous and claimed that by using these devices, a person opens themselves up to demonic oppression or possession, topics upon which Martin spoke and wrote about a lot for like whole lot of years. That was a topic that he was pretty well versed on. Didn't really give a time frame of when he he was alive, but I would imagine the Catholic Church does get a lot of, hey, I was playing with a Ouija board and stuff's getting weird.
Right. What do you think is what makes the Ouija board work?
See, now I get really skeptical. Even in our experiences, I was always very skeptical if there was a lot of people touching it. Because, I mean, just the basic principle of people create energy and energy can be focused and move it. Or there's also, if there's a lot of people, you can't tell if somebody's pushing it. So, um, the times I've seen it move on its own, where there was nobody touching it, I knew that there was no human interaction with it. But I guess it would depend on the experience you have with it. What do
I
you think?
I agree with what you said. Um, this the ideomotor effect.
Idiom, idiomotor effect?
Idio, is that how you say it? The
I think it's
ideomotor effect. Um, the unconscious, involuntary physical movement. That is what some say is what causes it to move. So you're not actually communicating with anybody.
about yourself.
Yeah, it's I don't know how I feel about that though, because with our experiences, like, I don't know, I didn't.
We have had the experience of not touching it yet and moving in to
Yeah,
touch, and it moved away.
like, how do
So,
you explain that? Like, if that's what it is, it's really our subconscious.
well, that's the whole problem with, people saying that giving a definite opinion on this, on whether or not it's real and it's a spirit moving it, or that no, it's just you doing it, is personal experience. You can't prove a personal experience. Like, and even in our experiences, the only proof we have is each other and the other people that were there. But none of it was documented because we were
Right,
just.
we didn't document any of that, like fools.
And we did experience both ends of it, where there was a lot of people touching it and didn't
Yeah,
really know it was joking, or it
yeah,
moved.
most
And
times you don't really know. That's true. This is saying your brain may unconsciously create images and memories when you ask the board a question. But with the things that we asked when we used it, like, that
we
doesn't
were
apply.
we were also using that board in a house that was already spiritually very active. That's why we started using it, to find out what it was. No, there was already objects moving. There was already, disembodied voices. There was all these things that were already happening, and we were trying to use it to figure that out. And I think that that changes things too. Because if you go into the library and pull it out, no, probably it's just your friend moving it. But
Right.
you know, or a public, a park or something like that. Although I have seen YouTube videos where it looks like it's moving on its own, and they're outside in a public place. So it's the person. It's just like ghost stories. It's the personal experience. You can't disprove what somebody's seen or
But
felt themselves.
it's the feeling is what does it for me, because when we did it, I felt the energy shift in the room.
There were certain times that I would feel like weight on my hand, and then you'd get that cold, tingly feeling all up and down your hands. And
Yeah.
that could have just been, some psychosomatic thing reacting to my brain, making my body move away. But I guess the heaviness of the room and the way that everything shifted, that
Yeah, that's
even shadows look different and lighting changed. I mean, those are type of things that you can't recreate and you can't correctly explain to somebody and you can't prove.
in the smells. I will say I remember smelling,
Flowers.
yes, flowers, floral scents when we used it. Not every time, but at least a couple times, to where it was strong enough to where it freaked me out because I had never experienced anything like that before.
Another thing that tipped me off about, because when we first started using it, like I said, the house I lived in was already active, but we still didn't take it very seriously. We were playing around. Like,
Right.
am I
Laughing and
gonna?
giggling and
Yeah, we didn't take it very seriously. We weren't like, and I don't even think that we probably closed the board every time. That we were that careless with it. That it definitely encouraged the activity that was happening in the house. I will say that everything got worse progressively, and it seemed like the more we used the board, the more the house responded, and there's just no other way to explain that. The house became
right.
alive, and you experienced that, and you were.
Yeah, I've felt all of that.
I,
That's what
I,
made me. That's why I go, like, I don't know if I can believe this. Like, this kind of makes sense, but then at the same time, what I personally experienced was not my subconscious.
and it wasn't, and I mean, there was experiences we had that where it was me, you, and another person in the room, and that was it. And we were standing near it. We weren't even touching the board, hadn't opened anything with a question, and it moves. And I don't, if everybody is at least seen a Ouija board, if you flip over the planchette, there's felt on the bottom of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't just slide. You've got to give it a little
Yeah, you have
nudge.
to put a little bit of pressure on it.
It's not going to just like the wind's not going to blow it across the board. That's not going to happen.
And the doors and the gust of wind, the very first time that I used the Ouija board.
I forgot about that.
Do you remember that? Am I remembering something that didn't happen? Because I swear to God, I remember that with everything in my being.
I completely forgot about that happening, but yeah, and if you remember right, that house had like a fun house effect too, where like it was so old that like one room would slant one way and room would slant another way.
Right.
So Um, and what was crazy about that house is the landlord came in and put in all new floor supports in the basement. And if you remember right, there was no give in that floor. Like there was no bounce in it. So it was sturdy, but it was just something about that house. Like it was just never right. But the doors opened against gravity. Like if there was going to be the way that the house was shaped, it would have fell open the opposite way, and they didn't.
Yeah, it would have been like on the slant down.
And it didn't. It came against gravity with a gust of wind and slammed those doors
Yeah, it
shut.
was a gust of wind, I remember, and we had no windows or anything open. I don't remember the season, but I remember all the windows and the door. It was like late, everything was shut. And that happened. And then
If
the
you
room felt like 20 people walked in.
if you remember
It
that
gives
we
me
never,
chills thinking about that. Oh my God.
I was thinking about this today. If you remember, we never had air conditioning in that house, but that house was never hot.
No, I don't remember it being too hot ever.
And I mean, it was summer, here it gets muggy, so
Yeah.
it should have been unbearable at times, especially with a two-story house, and it never was.
That's great. Sorry, I'm thinking about that one experience, that one thing I remember so. I remember it so well.
The one that did it for me was it was the last time. It was the time that we decided we're not playing with this thing anymore. Things are getting way too wild. Was when we left, we weren't even home, and came home, and the board was sitting on the table.
Oh, hell
And
no.
I looked at my mom. I was like, "We're never touching this again. We're never doing this again. It's now
That
has the
gave
power.
me chills. Oh my gosh.
It now has its own power enough to move itself, and we just put it away in a drawer, and we did never touch it again. But we had awoken and fed whatever was in
Yeah,
that
you didn't
house,
need to touch it no more because you gave it everything it needed.
and nobody has lived in that house again since us.
See, I also think that you don't need just a Ouija board. Like people say, oh, the Ouija boards are bad and evil. But to me, a Ouija board, I mean, I guess I can kind of see where people come from, but they're some people say because the Ouija board's different because you're giving it permission to use your body, but I'm like, I didn't do that. I didn't tell it to use my body. But to me that's no different than saying, is anybody here, and pulling out a recording or a recorder and trying to talk
And
that way. I don't see the difference.
and do you remember before we did ever touch the Ouija board, we were able to communicate something or with something with a candle.
A candle?
We remember we were in the living room and there was a candle lit in the middle of a coffee table, and we were all, you, me, and my mom were sitting on the couch, and we were talking about all the weird things that were happening. And it was like the candle was acknowledging what we were talking about. It would flare up and get really bright
Oh, I
and then
do
die
remember
back
that.
down. And one of us had the idea maybe we can get it to do like two of those for yes, one for no, and talk to it. And we did that for like an hour or so, and something was responding to the two get brighters for yes and one get brighter for
Mm-hmm.
no. And it's the same concept. Divination is divination. Tarot cards are divination.
Yeah, to me, that's just my personal feeling. I mean, I guess I understand the Ouija board, you're touching it, but I'm not giving anything any permission. I'm just, I don't know. But Spirit Box, I guess, that's the same to me. You're talking to it, and then you're holding the device a lot of the time, waiting
You
for
think
something to speak to you.
you would think a spirit box would almost be worse because you're using an electrical device that puts
Mm-hmm.
out energy
You're giving it
asking.
more energy to.
Right. I mean, we do too just by walking in the room.
Right.
But that's intent. Your intent is to give it energy. And I don't know. I've always been, I mean, with what my personal experience is, I know that it can work absolutely as a divination tool, and you can communicate with something that's not, you can't see. I know you can. I've experienced it, but is it going to happen every time somebody picks it up? No,
Yeah, I know
because,
it doesn't always work because most of the people that use them say nothing ever happens, and they're like, "Oh, this is crap."
and I think there's a point of view that there has to be something paranormal there. There's not going to be a spirit every place you go. You're not, every house is not going
Possibly. Well, yeah, because we used it when y'all moved out of that house, and we didn't have the same experiences.
yeah, it didn't do anything.
I
It was,
remember it still did once, once, but we were I guess over it by then because we only did it for a second. It was just me and you, and we're like, forget it. But it wasn't the same at all.
there wasn't the change in atmosphere. There wasn't the
I
where you
remember the
knew.
candle flicking, and I didn't believe the stuff it was saying, but it just wasn't the same. The energy, everything was different than that house.
That house was just an experience all on its own.
It could be a show.
Good. We could just have one episode where we talk about experience. I mean, I lived for 7 years, so there's experiences I forgot that the other day, me and my family were talking about some of the experiences we had in that house. And as each person walked in the room and just caught bits and pieces of the conversation, they were like, "Oh, Washington Street, that's what you're talking about." Like they knew. There's only one place that was going to happen at.
Yeah. Yeah, and y'all were there, you just said y'all were there for a while.
So, what do you think about Randonautica? Do you think that that's the modern day version of a Ouija board?
I never thought of it that way, but kind of. It's kind of the same thing, except instead of on a board, you're literally going
And you give
to
it
the.
what you give it what your intent is. If you have bad intentions, it'll lead you to something bad.
Right.
Suppose I have not actually done. I have the Randonautica app. I downloaded it, but I have not had the balls yet to do it.
Yeah, I haven't done it because my husband was like, that's not a good idea, just safety wise, because of people.
Right? I
But
don't. I would never do it by myself, but it's hard to find somebody to go ghost hunt with you.
it is. It is. You're not, usually in your normal, typical conversations, but like, hey.
Yeah, this conversation has almost never came up in everyday conversation. It's usually I only talk about it with people I experienced it with. I don't like to talk
Same.
about
I only talk
it.
about it mainly with like my mom, my sister,
It
only people who don't tell me I'm crazy when I say stuff.
well, that's the reaction you get when you start telling people that you've seen, you know, that seen it move on its own. They're like, "Yeah, were you drunk? Were you high?" That's
Exactly.
usually the first thing thought or said. I'm like, dude, I didn't have my coffee yet. I just woke up.
The Randonautica, though, I mean, I guess it's kind of the same as this. What is that? The thing we were just talking about. How did you say it? Idio, mute motor. In fact, if you're using your subconscious to like take you somewhere. But some people supposedly find really scary shit or weird shit. Like if it's true, it really is so weird.
Also seen ones are like just because of our interest, like my YouTube is full of like randonautica, like ghost hunting or finding
Mm-hmm.
bodies, things like that. But I did search for positive videos using it, and there was one where a guy put in the intent of love, and it led him to his brother's grave that recently died.
Oh,
So right, so that wasn't creepy or weird or bad. So maybe it's the same concept. Whatever your intent is with a Ouija board is what you'll get back.
possibly. Possibly why also, um, if you're not being serious, you usually will never get anything out of it because you're not even serious. You're not even trying to use it.
Do you think it's spirits like you ain't even paying attention?
They're like, no, you don't mean business, so we can't talk.
I've never touched one since then either. Since that time frame, like I
I
said, I
haven't
own.
either, and I honestly don't think I ever would again.
I said I own one. If I wanted to, I could, but I like it aesthetically. I think it looks cool hanging on my wall. I love the reaction that certain people give when they see it. Door that cracks me up. And also with other people that are like minded, it's a conversation starter.
Right.
So and really it's just a nod to my favorite movie, The Exorcist. So again, intent is everything.
It's funny how your feelings towards things change. Like, I don't know. Some people think only evil is in it. Like you're never speaking to who it says. Like it's always lying.
I
And I
think that
almost lean that way a little bit because, at least in our experiences, it was scary. Like it never hurt us, but it never felt like good. You know what I mean?
I also noticed, depending on where in the house we used it, if we were in the dining room, and if you remember, my mom's decorations in the dining room were all very Christian, Catholic crosses
Yeah.
everywhere. Uh, if we used it there, the energy wasn't so heavy. But if we went down in the basement,
Oh
it
my
felt
god,
like
it was horrible.
you felt like you were walking through mud. You knew that there was something in that basement that was not good. You could feel it.
Like
But
all the time, just being down there in general, you're not even
right,
playing with it.
and upstairs was a little bit lighter. So I think that maybe in that house there, no, I know that something, whatever was in that basement was probably demonic because
The energy
there's,
didn't feel good, that's for sure.
right, right. And what always got me is, our friend that lived in the basement that was a boxer, he was a huge beast of a man. When he slept down there, he slept with a damn nightlight on because he couldn't handle it.
Right.
There was, oh, and if you remember, nothing electrical ever worked right down there. Like that, it would be hit or miss on if you had power down there. Remember, we had to
I
move
remember
our
your
drive.
stove that was close to the basement in the kitchen malfunctioned once. Like
Yeah, yeah,
the numbers on it.
that happened after we stopped playing with it and stopped playing with the Ouija board. And like I said, things got really
It
escalated.
wanted us to play.
Right.
Because we were like contemplating it that day, and then that happened. We're like, never mind.
If you if you remember right, we were talking about using it because I think there is something to it, that there's something addictive about it. That you're because
There
you
is, because
don't.
we did use it so much.
Yeah, it was like they explained in the 20s. We were playing it like it was Monopoly. Or like, hey, let's play Scrabble. Oh, hey, go get the Ouija board. And you remember there was people coming over just to use the Ouija board.
Right. Of course,
It
maybe
was
people's energies do have something to do with it, and maybe that was the problem. There's too many people
that's what
wanted
I think,
it. I don't
that
know.
we were like feeding everything that was in that house, good and bad.
Right.
As like in the upstairs, like the bedroom, there was almost a playful energy up there. Like I
Not
never
like being chased up the stairs.
I really do think that there was a little kid there because
Every
the
time I
like I
walked up those stairs, I know sometimes you can get the feeling that you feel like you're being followed, but like I would run. Like I thought something was running after me up the stairs.
I had that experience a couple of times, but what was crazy is there was one day my brother was upstairs in his room, and his room was right next to mine. And I heard him in his room playing, and he was talking to somebody. I mean, this was a full on conversation, and my brother at the time was 8, 9 years old, so he was having a conversation. And I snuck around the corner and looked in the door, like, who is he talking to? Is he talking to himself? And I look in the room and I can see the cars on the floor moving across from him, like there is somebody playing with him. And he's staring ahead, talking to him. Like there's a child playing with him. And he's just there playing around away. Yeah, you get the red one, you drive it up the hill, blah, blah, blah. And I let it go for a little bit. And then it started to creep me out. And I was like, Mikey, who are you talking to? And he turned and looked, and like the toy stopped and dropped. And he was like, oh,
Yeah,
nobody.
that's creepy.
But like I said, it was almost playful upstairs. So I think, and
Yeah,
even
it was
that,
different. It was less scary.
and it was like when I don't know if you had this experience sleeping upstairs or not, but it always, or every once in a while, it would feel like somebody was playing with your feet. Like they'd want to get your attention. And it kind of reminded you of a little kid.
I don't remember that, but I do remember always running up the stairs. Like every single time I went up the stairs, I ran up the stairs, like, because I felt like I was being chased. But
But
not by a monster or anything. Like, I don't know. It's hard to explain. Definitely
uh,
different energy.
at the point where somebody got pinned in their bed and couldn't get out of it was the part that was the time that we were starting to think about moving out of there because it was obviously escalated to the point that if it can hold you down, it can hurt you.
Yeah, that's not good.
And there was kids there, so we started looking for another place to live. And oddly, the landlord died just like a week or two after that. So the house was being sold. So it was almost like it was supposed to happen that we left.
Yeah.
But a few years later after that, my mom and one of my brothers stopped in, and there was a workman there working on the house. And they stopped to talk to him because, that is probably the one moment in all my family's life that we can't explain. And the only thing we can do is gather more people that experience the same thing in that place. And they asked the workmen, "Do you experience anything weird here?" And they told them stories about power tools taking off by themselves that weren't plugged in. And, you know, the things that we seen, but just on a little bit less of a scale than that. And, like tools coming up missing, repairing something to where it's straight and coming back the next day and it's exactly how they left it. No, or like the house will not let change happen to it.
That's creepy. And my dog just made a noise and it scared the hell out of me.
But I found it interesting that the house has been sold a few times after we left, but they don't stay very long. It's only like maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then you see a for sale sign go right back up on it. I
I
don't
don't
know who
blame
could.
them. I'm amazed I ever stayed the night there. And I did all
Yeah,
the time.
all the time. If you weren't at home, you were at my house. But yeah, that was.
It's,
It made me not know how to feel about Ouija boards or even messing around with stuff like that because we got a pop the very first time that you might be playing with something that's stronger than you that you
yeah.
don't.
And why, although none of us ever got hurt or anything like that, it was still scary.
Just the idea when it started um, getting stronger and showing its strength, just the idea that it could do that, if it could do that to an inanimate object, it could do that to a person.
Right.
And that's what the terrifying thought was. It never did, but and I don't understand why it didn't. We were there so long, and we started doing the Ouija board stuff like in the middle of when we lived there. We lived there for years after it,
Mm-hmm.
and it
And
just steadily
before. And
right, and just steadily increased like the 3 or 4 years that we lived there after we were playing the Ouija board to where it became where it was unbearable, where it was affecting whether or not you were sleeping and moods, and there was obviously energy that was interacting with us negatively, and we did it to ourselves. I mean, we didn't
mm-hmm.
invite it. I do believe it was already there, but we fed it. We
Yeah,
made
I
it a
think
strong.
so. As soon as we, it's gonna give me the chills again saying it, but as soon as we all touched the board that first, well, I don't know if it was y'all's first time, it was my first time. That's when everything shifted.
The first time actually wasn't with a store-bought board. Um, Me, my mom, and two of our friends that lived across the street in that boarding home came over and we made one out of paper and tried it, and nothing happened. So I don't know if there's something about, you know, the way the planchette's made
That's
or
weird because I always wondered. I was always thought, well, you can make your own and it would do the same. So that's interesting. And you said nothing happened.
I thought maybe there might have been because we did make it out of paper. There might there might not have been enough contact with it or too much. Like at that point, we were just experiencing small things like objects coming up missing or, you know, things moving against gravity, but, not forceful, just like a ball bouncing uphill or a
Right.
door opening that shouldn't have. It wasn't anything major. And maybe at that point it wasn't strong enough yet. We hadn't fed it enough yet. Isn't that crazy that all you can do, that you can actually manifest things like that just by concentrating energy on it, which is pretty much what we did. We concentrated energy on what was
Yeah,
happening around us, and it got worse.
that is crazy. Scary to think about. Now, I would never tell anybody to go out and buy one or play with one, but I'm still on the fence with them. Still on the fence. Not exactly 100% sure on how I feel about them.
I said, when when we visit the next time, I'm not going to pull it off the wall and be like, hey, Jojo, let's check this out again. That's not going to happen. But my experience, I guess, at the end of the day and looking back on it, there's been quite a bit of time between now and then. Looking back on it, I don't ever remember being scared. Like, like you see in the horror movies where they're terrified and running from for their lives. I don't ever
Yeah, it
remember
was nothing
feeling
like that.
there was just it was the only thing I can explain it is there was just this heaviness and it just got heavier and heavier and heavier and more things I couldn't explain kept happening. And it was the board that escalated that. So, yeah, like you said, I'm never going to be like, hey, go try it out, kids. But it's not an experience I regret
Yeah, I
because
don't either because I think it opened my eyes to the possibilities.
that's exactly it. That time, I mean, I'd had other paranormal experiences before, and one other one was quite profound, but there was nothing I'd ever experienced before that was for that length of time and consistent. Like, those spirits or whatever's in that house, we like made up names for them and would be like, knock it off, Steve. Things. Yeah, we just lived with them. It wasn't a. I don't remember being scared like that. So, um, I don't regret it. I wouldn't tell somebody, yeah, go buy one. But if you ever are that curious,
Just be careful, you know.
I would I think I would recommend prayer before, and maybe if you're religious, your religious artifact of choice, cross, whatever it may be. Um,
Some crystals or something.
right,
Like some
whatever it
sage.
may be. Protect yourself as much as you can, but probably, like that guy said, 9 times out of 10, it's gonna end bad because it could have with us. It very well could have. That thing was strong enough to hurt somebody. We just got lucky it didn't.
Yeah, we got real lucky.
Have you ever had anybody invite you to play with a Ouija board since then?
No, I have not. You are the only one that I did stuff like that with. Like, my mom and my sister are into the paranormal, but they will not touch a Ouija board. My brothers will not touch a Ouija board. Like,
I,
nobody
I
around me.
I remember them freaking out on us a little bit when we told them that we'd been playing with one and that my house was getting weirder and weirder. My mom would be like, "I wonder why."
Yeah, she thinks, that's not the wisest thing, but again, that's what everybody thinks, and I'm conflicted on if I think that is the thing that.
And looking back on the things that it was like trying to give us predictions, I hate to say this, but I would say that board was about 80-20 on being right.
I don't remember that stuff.
It never gave short-term predictions.
Like, I don't
Like,
remember what we ever asked.
I remember there was one time and it was it was like just me, you, and my mom, and maybe one other person. But we were just in the dining room, and I think that may have had something to do with it, or maybe I trusted a little bit more because there was so much religion around us that I thought maybe that would keep anything negative away. But we had asked it, um, not like, am I going to get married, or because at this time you and I weren't married at that time. You weren't. I don't believe. I can't think.
I don't think
Were
so.
I,
I know I
I,
got married when you guys lived there, but you lived there for so many years that I don't remember.
right. I don't think were even married yet. That looking back, that with the things that it predicted, we didn't ever ask anything specific like, are we going to have kids, or when are we going to get married, or anything like that. It would be pretty general things like, um, I do believe it was things just like in general, am I going to have a good life, or um, I do believe you asked it once if you were going to stay in Michigan, and it told you no. So that ended up being right. The There was other things too, but time has erased them, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was long ago.
And I don't know about you, but time has kind of like blended everything together. Like, I can't pinpoint in my memory what the first time was and what the last time was. Like,
Me, me either. But I think that I want to say the first time was in the dining room when the doors opened. At least for me,
I
because
don't
I
know
remember
if that
being
was
terrified.
I don't remember if that was the first time we ever used it, or if that was the first time we ever got a response.
I really want to say that was the first time that I used it, and maybe that's why that experience sticks with me so. I could be wrong, but I believe that it was either the first time that I used it, or like you said, the first time that we got a response.
Funny is, somebody put on Facebook, it was a meme of another well-known house in that town that's reportedly haunted, and it said, has anybody had any experiences in this house? And I put on there, I was like, you want a real experience, go, and I gave the address. And there was like 5 people that were like, yes, yes, yes. So either they've lived there or they knew somebody that did. Because, even in your experience, even visitors had experiences in that house. You didn't even have to live there. They would not. I never seen a full bodied apparition. I did
No,
see
I've never seen anything like that.
I did see shadow people, but I did not see like full in front of me. That's what they looked like. It was shadow people.
I've seen things move, and that's about it.
There wasn't any. The house wasn't shy. It wasn't like there's nothing in that experience that I had that like horror movies prepared me for. It wasn't. the slow burn that it was portrayed as, where activity is slow and light and slight. It, I mean, it showed itself that it was there right off the bat. There was weird smells in the basement right off the bat. So like I said, things would move. It just wouldn't be as strong until later on. So it definitely was crazy and not something I want to do again. But I don't regret doing it. So it's a weird emotion to have, I guess.
I wouldn't play with one again. I mean, I've said before that I would, but like thinking back now on some of those experiences, I don't think I could. I was much braver back then than I am now. I'm not
Would
afraid.
you would you do it again in a place that is known to be haunted, or would you do it again in a place that is probably not? That would test that would test the theory on, does there have to be something already there, or is that really a door or a window to something
I
else?
mean, yeah, that would be like a good way to test it, though. A place that doesn't already have the activity to see.
Or at least none that's active. I
Right.
mean, there is a possibility that these things just the interest generates enough energy to wake up things. And
Just so scary. So scary.
a whole lot of weird things out there that you just can't explain. And unfortunately, how these work is one of them. Nobody really knows. And almost
Yeah,
everybody
people can
has a
guess.
different experience with it.
Because some people have horrible, horrendous experiences. Of course, there are people that also call out to demons like fools. So that definitely I would not advise. But then again, I don't know if those are true because it's just what somebody, watching somebody else do it. Like they could be full of crap for all I know.
I think maybe fear levels. I think that has something to do with it too, because I think the fact that we really weren't scared of it had something to do with why it didn't hurt us.
Well, I was scared. Well, I mean, I was scared, but it never
But
stopped me.
you,
I mean, I still did it.
you still did it. You still came over.
It didn't change anything. I mean, it actually is what started our love for ghost hunting.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. Is okay, if this is going on in my house, where else is it going on? Are we the
Yeah.
only people that experience this? And, oh well, I know that there's tons of people that have these experiences, and there's tons of people that were dumb like we were and played with them, and
The
we
fact that
just
so many people have had things happen, though, like something's going on. And I don't believe it's all subconscious. That I don't. Maybe
I mean,
partially. Maybe
there's
sometimes.
there is the whole thing of manifesting things, and that I do believe on a certain level you do manifest things, but in our experience, I don't I don't think it was a manifestation issue. It was an issue that we were given the house fuel, and I keep saying the house like it was living, but it towards the end of living there, it definitely felt like it was alive.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have called this channel Two Dumb Girls, because that was so dumb that we did that stuff back then.
I know. When sometimes I think about some of the stuff we done, I'm like, wow. Did we have
And
any brain cells?
I think it was just the kind of the inexperience of youth, that we thought we were invincible, and this stuff isn't real, isn't it gonna hurt us?
And
And
curious. Very, very curious about all of it. I still am, but now that I'm older, I'm very cautious. about my curiosity.
Yeah, I haven't ghost hunted since we did it last. I haven't did any of that stuff since we did it last. And that house definitely kicked all of that off. We started look. I mean, I remember laying in your backyard staring at the sky because all of a sudden we were going to check out if UFOs were real now too. Like, started out everything.
My mom's yard's a good place to do it, though. You can see the sky so well.
We used to get so creeped out.
I still do.
Prob-
I'm such a scaredy cat. It's silly.
we
But yet
probably
I
got.
love it. It's like,
I explained that to my son because he's at the age where he doesn't understand. I mean, he doesn't understand why there's scary stuff on the TV, and scary stuff to him is like a skull, so or anything
yeah.
Halloweenish. And I was explaining to him that sometimes it's fun to be scared, and that's why people watch scary stuff is because it's fun to be scared. And most of most of our pursuance of any of it was we like to be scared. We have to.
Yeah. I do to a point because I still watch scary stuff all the time. I prefer to watch that over anything.
That
Scary
house has
movies.
made me so desensitized that like when I watch a movie like The Conjuring or something like that, I'm like, oh, I call bullshit.
That is my favorite movie in this world. I watch that movie all the time. I can't even count how many times I've seen it because I rewatch it over and over because I love it. I do not know why. Only the first one though. The rest of them, eh. The first one, I love.
I don't know, the one with the nun in it got me.
Well, yeah, the nun was creepy.
But yeah, that it was that house. That house opened. We all of a sudden, but we're gonna see if Bigfoot's real. Let's go walk in the woods.
Oh my god, the woods. Oh, the woods are so creepy. We could do a whole episode on the woods, I can tell you. The last time I went, though, to the woods was... Everybody with me probably wanted to leave my ass in the woods because that was so annoying. I was the biggest baby ever.
I would like to take a walk in the woods around where you are now. You've got a lot of Civil War history around you.
Oh my god, the woods and the mountains are like scary AF. Oh my god, when we went camping, like we hike a mile into the woods and then go camp. We did that. I didn't really enjoy it because when it's nighttime, the woods scared the tar out of me. I hate the woods. They're so creepy. I hate them, but I love them. It's another one of the love-hate.
It's because you like to be scared. You like that fear of the unknown, which is pretty much what we're... I think what you and I are always chasing is to figure out what that unknown is. Put our finger on it. Because I do believe that at that experience, that's what's so addicting is that you feel like you're going to find out. And what you find out is it's more about the what you feel than what you see.
Yeah. I've given up on seeing stuff. Well, I mean, I don't want to really now. I mean, I guess, the point to kind of prove that I'm not crazy, see something, but I don't want... I don't know really how I would handle that if I did, so... But, like, feeling. I don't really mind feeling.
I think that's what scared me a little bit about the Ouija board is I felt something before that planchette moved. You would feel as soon as whatever was there to talk was there.
Yeah, like literally, like I said, as soon as I remember touched it, and then it was like, hello.
mean, it wasn't like it jolted you back in the seat like you see in movies or anything like that.
It was just
just
noticeable. And
right.
it scared me, but because there was so many of us there, I didn't go running. Like, if I was by myself, I would probably shit my pants. But we had people there, so it was less scary, but still scary. Because, like,
I remember an incident that happened that was one of those moments where, okay, we're actually gonna try to contact whatever this is, or we're gonna try to figure out whatever this is. But it was me and my foster brother. We were the only two home. And my foster brother was downstairs in the basement. That's where his room was. And I was upstairs in the living room. And he came casually walking upstairs and he's like, Amber, come downstairs. I want you to see something because it's not right. I was like,
is that the
what are you
bike?
talking about? Yep. And he had his bike turned upside down. So
I remember that.
it was sitting on the handlebars in the seat. And the front tire was moving in one direction and the back tire was moving in the opposite direction. I was like, well, that's weird. And I put my hands on both tires and I stopped it. I looked at him, I was like, that's so strange. And that basement didn't even have windows. So it's not like it could
Yeah,
have
there
been
wasn't even one window in there.
so it couldn't have been a breeze. It had to be something actually moving it. I remember letting go of it and it did it exactly again, like it did before. And him and I just went upstairs. Like, whatever wants to play with the bike can play with the bike. We went upstairs and wasn't giving it any more attention. But when everybody came home, the adults sat down and was like, we all started telling each other these things that were happening like that. And that was the decision that the not so smart decision is, yeah, let's get a Ouija board. And
That'll make it better.
well, I think everybody involved had that thought that The Exorcist is just a movie. That it's not something
Yeah, it's make
that
believe.
that doesn't happen. Or that's not going to happen to me. That's what you have that thought. I think that was everybody's thought is, oh, that stuff is just movies. That's not going to happen. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. Hit the like and subscribe button. Please remember to share and leave us in the comments if you've had any personal experience of your own with a Ouija board. Would you play with it again? Did you have a good experience or a bad one?